Hey guys, it's Shadow the Rat, and for today's video I wanted to talk some about something that unfortunately happened with my sweet girl Toast here, and that is that she degloved the tip of her tail. So it has nearly healed, as you can see, and there's just a tiny little scab on the end that is healing right now, but overall it doesn't look bad because it's pretty much completely healed, and the exposed bone has dropped off, which now that I say exposed bone, that immediately makes it sound absolutely awful, which to be fair, it was a pretty awful experience. Definitely more awful for Toast, but it definitely freaked me out as well. But anyways, for anyone who doesn't know, a rat's tail is special in that the skin on it can easily tear off. And this would be helpful if, let's say, a predator were to grab them on their tail, then they can run and the skin tears off and they get away. They're left with a huge open wound and exposed bone and have a huge infection risk, but that is definitely outweighed by the fact that they're able to get away from something that potentially is going to kill them immediately. Now, with our pet rats, of course, they don't need to worry about any sort of predator, but they still have the same biology as wild rats. And unfortunately, that means that their tails are still extremely delicate. And this means that any sort of pressure on the tail, especially more than halfway up the tail, is going to be pretty dangerous for the rat because it is putting their tail at risk of that skin tearing off. So if you ever see anyone handling their rat by their tail and it's over halfway up, that is really not something you want to do because that puts them at a big risk of degloving the tail, which is what it's called when the skin falls off. Anyways, basically what happened with Toast was that I was doing some training with her and Coffee, which is another of my rats, and I realized that I had left the treats on the other side of the room. So I stood up and carefully went over to get them. And I pretty much never walk when my rats are out because, well, there's a big size difference, so I just don't feel comfortable doing it. So I usually put them in their travel cage when I get out props and stuff for training. But in this case, I had already gotten out the props, but I had forgotten the treats, and of course those are pretty important. So I went and I got those, and I came back and I sat down very carefully, just because both of the rats were following me, as they tend to do when I stand up. And I thought I was home free as usual because I've done this definitely in the past, although I do try to avoid it. And I was watching very carefully for their bodies, of course. But what I missed was that the tip of Toast's tail was right below my knee. So unfortunately, I did end up putting my weight down. And then after that, I heard a squeak and I looked down and I just saw this little fleshy looking thing sitting on the ground. And I was like, what is that? And then I looked up and I realized that Toast had degloved the tip of her tail. Now, thankfully, this was a very minor degloving. It was well under an inch, and typically, if you see an inch or more, the rat will need surgery to remove the exposed bone, just because it is a high infection risk. However, in the case of smaller deglovings, you often don't need to do surgery because the bone will dry up and fall off on its own. Anyways, Toast was put on some Medicam to reduce any inflammation and to also reduce any pain. And she was also put on some antibiotics for 10 days. And for the first 2 days, I kept her in a hospital cage with some fleece, which I was changing out daily. But after that, her bone had started to really dry out. And so she was at a lower risk of infection, and so I was able to put her back with her cage mates. And a few days after that, her bone dropped off, and now the tail looks like this. And as you can see, it's nearly completely healed. So yeah, degloving is definitely a pretty freaky thing, and I feel pretty bad because obviously, you know, it was a direct result of something that I did. Even if it was an accident. But thankfully Toast is doing quite well, and even though her tail is now a little bit shorter, she's not bothered by that, and she's getting around just fine. But yeah, I just thought I would go ahead and share this with you guys because I know in the past I've talked about degloving. I haven't had it happen before, but I have talked about it before. And I've had some people say that they weren't aware that the rat's tail was such a common place for them to deglove. So I thought I would go ahead and mention this and also show you guys how Toast is doing because she is a pretty old girl. Anyways, like I was saying, Toast is doing quite well. And she's nearly off meds, and she's also nearly healed up. So, yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and show you her. But yeah, otherwise, I will see you guys later, and I hope you have a good day. Bye!